Welcome to the debate. Today, we are talking about a dream that turned into a massive reality. We're diving into the journey of a farmer who started with just 800 chickens and has now scaled to a staggering 17,000 chickens on his farm. It is really a case study in aggressive expansion and the sheer will required to turn a backyard operation into an industrial powerhouse.
Yeah, it is an incredible story of growth, I agree. But we are specifically looking at his latest milestone, which is bringing in 5,000 egg-laying monsters in a single batch. From managing solar-powered houses to the science of the perfect egg-laying weight, we really have a lot to cover. So let's get into the coop.
Let's start with that number, 5,000. To me, this is the defining moment of the whole enterprise. You don't bring in 5,000 birds unless you have moved past that, farmer mindset and into a CEO mindset. This isn't just about animal husbandry anymore. It's about supply chain management. He moved from batches of 1,000 to 2,000, then 2,500. Now he's doubling down. At 17,000 total birds, the infrastructure, the solar power, the automated systems, that becomes the primary driver of success.
I see why you frame it as a CEO move, but I actually come at it from a completely different angle. You see a triumph of systems, and I see a terrifyingly narrow margin for error. We aren't talking about 5,000 widgets sitting on a warehouse shelf. We are talking about 5,000 fragile biological organisms, currently sitting at just 3 weeks and 4 days old. Jumping to 5,000 birds in a single batch introduces this exponential risk. A small error in biosecurity or temperature control is no longer a minor setback, it's a catastrophic failure.
Right, but risk is inherent in business. If you look at the operational necessity, he had no choice but to take this leap. The strategist in me looks at the numbers provided in the material. The farmer explicitly states that his previous batches of 2,500 were merely treading water.
Well, treading water implies stagnation. Biologically speaking, keeping a flock alive and healthy is a victory in itself.
But in a business sense, it is stagnation. He notes that he has a flock of 2,500 currently being off-laid, meaning they are leaving the farm, their productive life is over. If he only brings in another 2,500, he is simply replacing inventory. He's running on a treadmill. To actually grow the net total, which sits at 17,000 but dips to 14,500 when the old flock leaves, he must double the input. He has to bring in 5,000 to see any net gain on the balance sheet. This is supply chain optimization. He is maximizing the utility of that two-story housing unit, putting 2,500 birds on each floor to ensure the asset is sweating as hard as possible.
I understand the spreadsheet logic there, asset utilization, maximizing square footage, but I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning because it ignores the behavioral cost of that density. You are treating the housing unit like a storage locker. But listen to the environmental conditions described. The farm is dealing with wind, incoming rain, and dust. These chicks are described as being confused about the world.
They are chickens. They are generally confused.
It's more than that, though. It's actual panic. When the wind blows and dust enters, they don't just stand there. They run. They rush to the sides. When you have 800 birds running to a corner, it's a huddle. When you have 2,500 birds on a single floor panicking and rushing to one side because of a gust of wind, you risk smothering, overheating, and massive stress events. Scaling up means managing the psychology of a mob. The farmer admits they are learning and are scared. The logistics of the leap aren't just about math. They are about managing the collective panic of a much denser population. You just can't optimize panic with a spreadsheet.
That's a fair point on behavior, but that is exactly why the infrastructure is designed as a fortress. You can't control the wind, but you can control the environment. And that brings me to the design of the smart house. This isn't just a shed. It's an engineered asset. The source highlights the specific architectural feature of the side sheds or overhangs. These prevent rain from driving into the house, protecting the investment.
A necessary feature, certainly.
It's more than necessary. It is the first line of defense for the asset. If rain gets in, the litter gets wet, and the environment collapses. But look at the automation inside. They are using automated drinkers. This minimizes spillage and, crucially, reduces labor costs. One person can oversee thousands of birds because the water delivery is systematized. This allows the farmer to focus on the empire rather than filling water troughs by hand.
Yeah, I see why you prioritize the automation, but I would frame it differently. The smart house is totally useless without the deep litter system, which is a biological engine, not an architectural one. The source describes the wood shavings as being deep enough to swallow the farmer's gumboot. That depth isn't just for comfort, it's a waste management system.
It absorbs moisture, sure. It acts like a sponge.
It does much more than absorb. It requires active participation from the birds. The farmer notes that when birds poop, they must scratch and turn the litter over to mix it and ensure drying. It's a symbiotic relationship between the behavior of the chicken and the medium they live on. If the birds don't scratch, perhaps because they are too stressed from that density we discussed, the litter becomes a wet, ammonia-filled mat. The automated drinkers help, but the dry litter is the hero. And frankly, the most critical piece of technology mentioned isn't the overhang or the drinker, it's the foot dip.
The foot dip? We're talking about a massive operation here, and you're focusing on a plastic basin with disinfectant? That seems trivial compared to the scale of the building.
It is the firewall of the operation. You're talking about 17,000 birds, a single pathogen, maybe Newcastle disease or avian influenza, tracked in on a boot, doesn't just kill one bird. It sweeps through the flock like wildfire. The farmer explicitly states that shutting the doors and using the foot dip are non-negotiable. In a system this large, the simplest biosecurity measure is infinitely more valuable than the most complex automation. The risk is exponential. If you lose 800 birds, it hurts. If you lose 5,000, you go bankrupt.
I agree on the risk, but you mitigate risk with reliability. And nothing says reliability like the power setup on this farm. This is where the business strategy really shines. The farm uses no hydroelectricity. It is entirely independent, relying on solar panels and lithium batteries.
Which is impressive, I admit. Off-grid is the ideal for many reasons.
It's revolutionary for the bottom line. He's not at the mercy of the grid or power fluctuations. He has a battery bank that secures the business continuity. In a commercial operation of this size, losing power isn't an inconvenience. It's a financial disaster. The solar setup turns a variable cost, electricity, into a fixed asset. That is pure business brilliance. He has capped his operational expenditure while expanding his production.
It is brilliant, but again, I think you are missing the biological imperative behind it. The solar power isn't there just to save money on the electric bill. It's there because the chicks are physiological machines that require fuel. They are currently 3 weeks and 4 days old. They require light 24 hours a day.
Right, to see the food.
To drive their metabolism. The purpose of the light isn't just visibility for the farmer. It's to manipulate the bird's circadian rhythm. By keeping the lights on, you trick their system into a constant state of wakefulness so they continue to feed. They need to eat day and night to hit their growth targets. If that lithium battery fails, it's not just that the lights go out. The growth curve stalls. The bird stops processing calories. In a batch of 5,000, a stalled growth curve for even one night can throw off the entire production schedule. So yes, the solar is a good asset, but it's a biological life support system.
Well, speaking of growth curves and targets, let's address the elephant in the room. Or perhaps the fat chicken in the room. This brings us to the most interesting paradox in the source material. The strategist in me loves efficiency. And the golden rule of this farm is explicit. Fat layers don't lay eggs.
It's a standard axiom in poultry farming. Obesity suppresses egg production.
Exactly. The target is a lean, high-performance bird, ideally between 1.7 and 1.8 kilograms. The evidence is right there in the older flock. The farmer mentions his 26-week-old birds are achieving staggering production rates, 99.2 to 99.9%. That is unheard of, and they are doing it because they are kept strictly under 2 kilograms. So why, I ask you, is the current batch of 5,000 allowed to be 20 grams overweight? It seems like a slip in discipline. He's scaling so fast, he's losing control of the metrics.
I am sorry, but I just don't buy that it's a slip. That 20-gram overweight status is a brilliant, calculated biological insurance policy. You are looking at the weight as a static number, but you have to look at the timeline of trauma these birds are about to endure.
Trauma seems like a very strong word for routine farming procedures.
It is the only word that fits. These birds are facing a gauntlet. The source details the vaccination schedule: foulpox and fowl typhoid at 10 and 16 weeks. Let's talk about foulpox. It's not a drink of water. It involves a wing stab. You are physically piercing the web of the wing. That causes inflammation, fever, and a temporary drop in appetite. But the real kicker is debeaking.
The trimming of the beak to prevent pecking.
It is a major stress event. The beak is highly sensitive, full of nerve endings. After debeaking, the birds stop eating properly for up to a week because of the pain and the adjustment to the new beak shape. If they go into that week lean, at the perfect 1.7 kilogram weight, they will crash. They will burn through their reserves, fall behind the growth curve, and never recover their full laying potential. By allowing them to be 20 grams overweight now, the Head Start strategy, the farmer is building a caloric buffer. They will lose that weight during the stress events. If they start heavy, they survive the stress and land at the perfect weight. If they start lean, they turn into runts. It's not inefficiency, it's foresight.
That is a compelling argument. So you are saying he is intentionally overfeeding now to compensate for the starvation week later.
Precisely. He is banking calories.
I can respect that as a risk management strategy. But if we are talking about management, we have to talk about heat. You can't raise 5,000 birds without precise temperature control. And here I have to commend the engineering choice. The farmer has rejected traditional clay pots in favor of locally made metal stoves.
A controversial choice for some. Clay is traditional for a reason. It holds heat well.
But it's inefficient for this scale. It's a triumph of practical engineering to switch to metal. The efficiency ratio is incredible. He only needs 4 metal stoves to heat the entire massive space for 5,000 birds. Imagine the logistical nightmare of using clay pots. You would need dozens, maybe hundreds, to generate that kind of BTU output. You'd have staff running around fires all night. The metal stoves are a scalable solution.
They are scalable, but let's explain the thermodynamics of why they work better here. Clay pots are designed for conservation. They hold heat in the clay walls. That's great for a small hut with 50 birds where you want a gentle, lingering warmth. But for a warehouse with 5,000 birds, you don't need conservation. You need radiation.
You need to blast the heat?
Exactly. You need the heat to be thrown out into the air aggressively to reach the corners where those panicked birds might be huddling. The metal stove gets hot and projects that intensity outward. It's the difference between a warm rock and a radiator. The chicks need that ambient temperature to be high because, as we established, they are feathering out, but still vulnerable to drafts.
It's also about the interaction with the equipment. We noticed the transition in feeders. The birds are moving from tray feeders, which are basically plates on the floor, to adult feeders. The source highlights a very specific operational nuance here. The birds were using the old tray feeders as roosting patches.
Which is a polite way of saying they were standing in their dinner.
Exactly. They were pooping in the feed. The transition to the adult feeders isn't just because the birds are getting taller. It's about sanitation and stopping the wastage. It's another example of how the equipment has to evolve with the scale of the bird. You can't have 5,000 birds contaminating their own food source. The waste cost alone would destroy the profit margin.
And the disease risk. Coccidiosis, which causes severe intestinal damage, thrives when birds ingest feces. It is a fecal-oral cycle. If they poop where they eat, you are basically inoculating them with disease. Moving to the adult feeders, which hang lower or have guards that force the bird to reach up or over, breaks that cycle of contamination. It forces the bird to behave like a layer rather than a messy chick. It's a behavioral modification tool as much as a feeding tool.
So we have a scenario where the farmer is balancing these massive logistical shifts, doubling the flock, upgrading the heat, switching the power grid, all while trying to maintain that 99% production target. It really reinforces my view that at this level, farming is 90% logistics and infrastructure management. You can love chickens all you want, but if you don't have the metal stoves and the solar battery bank, you don't have a business.
And yet, every single one of those logistical decisions is dictated by the biological needs of the animal. You don't buy metal stoves for efficiency. You buy them for radiation. because the bird's thermoregulation demands it. You don't use solar for cost savings. You use it for metabolic consistency because the bird's endocrine system demands it. You don't allow them to get fat for fun. You do it to survive the wing stab and the debeaking. The empire is built on the back of the organism.
But without the empire-building mindset, the willingness to jump from 2,500 to 5,000, the organism is just a backyard hobby. The scale allows the precision, the ability to afford the lithium batteries, the automated drinkers, and the specialized stoves only comes from the capital generated by the sheer volume of birds. It's a cycle.
That is the symbiosis. The capital protects the bird, and the healthy bird generates the capital. But I worried that the leap to 5,000 introduces risks that money just can't solve. As we saw with the wind and the panic, 5,000 birds act like a fluid dynamic rather than individuals. If the software crashes, if a disease gets past that foot dip, or if the stress of debeaking is too high and they stop eating, the hardware becomes a very expensive tomb.
A grim thought, but a realistic one. However, looking at the results, the 26-week flock hitting 99.9% production, it seems the strategist has found the formula. He's running a factory where the machines just happen to be alive.
He has found a formula, yes, but I would argue he's running a nursery where the infants are exceptionally demanding and the stakes are life or death.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the audacity of the 5,000 bird batch to the intricacies of the fat chicken strategy. It's clear that success in poultry isn't just about the number of birds. It's about the precision of the management. From the automated drinkers that keep the litter dry to the solar setup keeping the lights on, every detail counts towards that 99% production goal.
Exactly. It's a mix of hard work, smart technology, and truly understanding the biological needs of your chickens. Whether you're starting with 800 or 5,000, the principles of care remain the same. There is always more to explore when balancing the scale of business with the reality of nature.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of high-performance farming. We will see you next time on The Debate.